It has been a while since there has been this type of excitement about a position coach meeting with the media, and that took place for the first time since, I guess, at least Mike Hart in 2021, Josh Gaddis in 2019, and that's because we met with Tony Alford, the former Ohio State running backs coach, who defected to Michigan. We'll get to some of the big takeaways from what he had to say, as well as that of LaMar Morgan, who was certainly very impressive in his own right. On this episode of Locked On Wolverines,
you are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, your very injured man on the ground. Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Much like some of the players that go through spring ball, I am day to day at the moment with a injured hip and lower back. I am questionable. Yesterday I was doubtful, downgraded to out. But today we're a little bit up and at 'em, and we got down to Ann Arbor to meet with Tony Alford for the very first time. I was excited to be like a message board commenter and yell first and get the first question in for him, which was the obvious. Although it's always fun sometimes when you go first, which I usually do. I would say 50% of the time in press conferences I'm the first person to ask a question. I like to get it out of the way as fast as possible. Sit in the front of the class apparently. And start immediately, like I do on this show, start coughing like 20 seconds into my question, or not even 3 seconds in. But nonetheless, Tony Alford was very, very impressive. I mean, now both of them were. But Alford, obviously, I asked him right away, what precipitated this move to, it's a lateral move to go to from Ohio State to Michigan. And he said this: for my growth, professional growth, and things of that nature, I thought it was a great opportunity. I have so much respect for Sharon. I've known him for quite a while. Just thought it was time. It was time for both parties. I don't know, but I thought it was time. It was a good opportunity. Later, he kind of said something about like the parties involved understand why I made this move on both sides. And certainly Ohio State fans will paint that as he was being pushed out. That might have a little bit of truth to it for whatever reason, one way or the other. But it doesn't really matter, right? And it kind of felt like, because obviously it didn't really matter because he was coaching in spring ball. It was clear that it wasn't like a dire situation. He would have been gone otherwise, right? But that makes me wonder what's kind of going on there behind the scenes. It could be nothing. Could be there could be some part of it. But at the same time, he refused to actually like badmouth Ohio State. Now that makes sense, right? He wasn't going to come and be like, those idiots down there. I had to get away from those idiots. That's, that's not something that you often see, but there were no shots across the bow really. Unless as a Twitter commenter said, like the fact that he didn't call it the Ohio State is a good enough of a shot for me. If you want to take that and run with it, by all means. But he had a couple moments of levity. Like he was asked, hey, you're known as being like a big time recruiter. And he said like, well, that depends on who you ask, asked about the, what's it, going to be like, if you thought about what it's going to be like when you walk into the horseshoe wearing maize and blue. And he's like, yeah. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do then? He's like, duck, he had a lot of moments that had a lot of levity to them, but it is very clear that he's got a good head on his shoulders. Now, that absolutely tracks because he went to my mom's alma mater, Colorado State. If you hearken back to 2021 when I interviewed my mom, and Colorado State super fan. That's tongue in cheek. My mom didn't even know Colorado State had a football program, but nonetheless, he's been around the block, and I think that some of the things that really stuck out was how often he mentioned Michigan's toughness and physicality. Now, he wouldn't wade in the water. He was asked about it. Will you say so? Can you say something about when the rivalry turned around? Can you say something about Michigan's toughness versus Ohio State's toughness? He would not get into the muck as far as that was concerned. but yet he just could not, he just kept on over and over and over again discussing Michigan's toughness, Michigan's physicality, the way that Michigan plays, the culture that's been built here. Sharon Moore having a lot of those attributes, and he was asked, what do you see from this guy, considering that you have coached under Urban Meyer, you've coached under Brian Kelly, you have been around a lot of these high-end types of guys. He says of Sharon Moore, just watching how he interacts with the team, players first and foremost, they believe, and you can tell by the way they respond to him when he speaks, again, walking in the staff room, and alignment. He talked a lot about the team all moving in the same direction. That's culture, which we talked about on the last episode. Culture not just amongst the players, but from Sharon down, which is, again, incredibly important. He continues. So I think that some of these things have been phenomenal. I'm not here to be judge or jury, but yeah, I think he's special. He's definitely special. The things that I saw helped me make a decision to come here. And so he's just confirmed everything that I thought. Again, his leadership, his way to get the people all aligned in the same way. The shared vision thus far has been great. So yeah, I think he's a special guy. And obviously that's what Michigan's hoping for. And hopefully that doesn't turn out the last time that I recall an assistant coach who'd been around the block saying something similar, which was Phil Martelli about Juwan Howard. So hopefully that's not the case, but we have a little bit more of a track record to go along with Sharon Moore as well. So there was a lot of really good, enlightening things that came out of this. I think that I think that he is really impressive, and I think that there's a lot to really like about what he brings to the table. He's still close to some of his guys. He said he talked at length to J.K. Dobbins yesterday evening. So that even shows you, like, his players, his former players are like, hey, I know you're on the other team, but I'm not going to shun you. Obviously, there's a respect beyond just the colors and everything, but it would be easy too to just, I don't think a lot of the defensive linemen were calling up Greg Madison that much after he made his move, right? So it does still say something, that, his former players who played for the other side were willing to come out and still support him, right? We'll get to more from what he had to say. I want to get to what he had to say about all of the running backs, and then we're going to get to LaMar Morgan at the end. We'll probably start a little bit halfway through next segment on LaMar Morgan. So we will do that here in just a second. Before we do, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, as well as college hockey. Don't forget about that. It's Frozen Four time. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's something I took advantage of not too long ago. It's a heck of a lot of fun. So remember, it's $150, win or lose. So that they are back to that promotion. Highly, highly recommend getting in on the action. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is super safe, secure, easy to use, pays you immediately. I recommend taking advantage of that so that you don't get lured into the idea of putting $250 on a couple blackjack hands, like maybe someone, I don't want to mention who, did. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, there was a ton to like I said, from Tony Alford, and it reminded me a lot of the energy that both he and LaMar Morgan brought. I think if you've paired LaMar Morgan with a current an assistant that's been around for a little while already, we'd all be raving about LaMar Morgan. This would be a LaMar Morgan episode, but because Tony Alford and his situation, I mean, he was very impressive. LaMar was just he's one of those guys that you look at him and you're like, okay, he's a future big time head coach eventually. He definitely has an aura about him. But Alford certainly, I mean, the feeling was similar, although I kind of cringe at this now. I think back to spring ball, when we I think it was the first time we got assistants. I did a little video. You can find it on my personal YouTube. You have to probably search back because it was from spring 2019. And I did like a little behind the scenes type thing, but I did it differently. brought in some music like it sounded like it was off of I don't even know if it was HGTV, their show Selling New York that used to be on. It was very like contemporary weird music that didn't belong in a sports video, but I liked it, so I put it in there anyway. I talked about like this is what it looks like coming in for a press conference. This is what the crowds look like. Questions being asked. Here's the process of what I do. And it was Josh Gaddis and Ben McDaniel. And I just remember like some of the things that I said on it. It was just like this excitement behind Josh Gaddis. Now, I wasn't alone in this. Everyone had that because, it was like, oh, man, speed and space. The offense is getting away from the stodgy old what have you. And everyone was excited about the idea of this Michigan offense all of a sudden being high flying and all of this. And I just remember my tonality, particularly in talking about Josh Gaddis, and it did not matriculate whatsoever. Anyway, but that's what it reminds me. So hopefully it doesn't end the same way. I mean, I shouldn't say end the same way, but start the same way. Because Gaddis ended up winning the Broyles Award after kind of running Jim Harbaugh's offense. And obviously that worked out pretty well, beating Ohio State, all that stuff. So you hope that it at least starts the way that ended in looking really, really good. But Alford, he broke down every running back on the roster pretty much. So here's what he had to say about Donovan. I'd have to go back to Donovan because he mentioned him in a separate spot. I asked him, as Edwards turned into what he expected when he was a recruit. Let's get to that in 2 seconds, because I thought one of the funnier moments was when he was asked if has Donovan said anything to you about his touchdown runs at Ohio State. And he's like, literally every day. He brings it up literally every day, which is a very Donovan thing to do, which you got to love him. But about him, because remember, I told you on this show, Donovan was supposedly number one on the board for Ohio State. They tried to have their cake and eat it too. They already had Evan Pryor committed. They were a little not exactly upfront with Donovan and ended up taking Travion Henderson when they kind of said that they weren't going to. And then they tried to play it off as, oh, we didn't know, but yay, number 3. But he already knew that they knew that Travion was coming. So kind of precluded the Buckeyes from that recruitment. But nonetheless, they've had a long storied history, right? Ohio State saw him as J.K. Dobbins 2.0. And here's what Alford had to say about him being a recruit to where he is now. And he said, yeah, he is what I thought he'd be. He's a dynamic player. There's still some things we need to work on, and he'll tell you that as well. Continue to progress and become a complete player that we also desire for him to be. More so he desires to be. So there's still some work to be done. But yeah, he is what I thought he was. He's bigger than I thought he'd be, as far as weight and things of that nature. But he's a highly, highly competitive kid. Always kind of knew he was, but he was about what I thought he was going to be. He has the ability to make plays. So that is very good, right? Like, obviously, he's RB1, so that's the type of thing that you want to hear from him. On Kalel Mullings, he said he's a dynamic player. I think he's a guy who's got opportunity to make a lot of plays. He's smart. Still learning the running back trade per se. Works hard. Extremely talented player. He has to work to continue to show. He's another guy that's a leader in his own right. A little bit different than Donovan, maybe not as vocal, but a very dynamic personality. Then you've got Tavier Dunlap, a good player. Continue to get to know these guys. These guys are all a little different. He's a little longer, striding guy. Works his tail off. I know he's worked his tail off on special teams throughout the years to continue to work with him, and he's been a joy to work with. So that's the first we've really heard anything of Tavier Dunlap. Benjamin Hall, he redshirted last year. He's a big body, 230, 235 pounds. He's had a good spring. He's had a little history as far as running vertically, though he's tough to tackle. He's big. He runs hard. It's hard to get a solid hit on him because there's a lot of surface area to hit. Cole Cabana still evaluating him. He missed some time, nothing major, just some nagging pain. Again, another kid that we haven't had an opportunity to evaluate a lot. Obviously, he's hungry, and we're going to see what he can do for our team. He mentioned Henry Donahue and Bryson, whose last name escapes me, the 2 walk-ons who have continued to make plays. So it's a good room, and he's got a lot to work with, right? It might look different than Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, but this is not necessarily a more productive group per se, but this is a group that one of the things that if you're Tony Alford, what makes sense to come to Michigan is there is a commitment to the run that has not existed in Ohio before. At least not since Trey Sermon was on the team in 2020, when they really started to try to become that vertical passing attack more so than they already were. So if you're Tony Alford, you are more so in the spotlight than you are whereas Kirk Campbell last year, not exactly a spotlight guy, maybe a little bit because he had J.J. McCarthy, but for the most part, the receivers coach at Michigan, Ron Bellamy, not as much in the spotlight as Brian Hartline has been at Ohio State because the running backs coach is a high-level premier position, and it seems like he likes what he has. It's a really good room from top to bottom. Not that Ohio State's wasn't, but when you add in the physicality, the fact that he has a line to run behind, it really bodes well. And that's when, now that I say that, I kind of wish we would have asked him, you inherit, yes, there's a lot of new faces on this offensive line. Now, we talked about the trenches and the physicality there, but it would have been interesting. Again, we talked to him for 22 minutes. Everyone wanted to get their questions in, but it would have been interesting to hear his thoughts on just coming to a school that has that more thorough commitment to the run, and as well as having a stable of backs where, at other schools, I know Cole Cabana had some injury issues last year, but I mean, just even what we saw from in the spring game from Benjamin Hall, that would have normally been like a eye opener and been like, hey, that guy, we're going to see that guy this year. It kind of like seeing Chris Evans in week 1 in 2016. It's like, hey, we're going to see this guy. This guy's going to be a big time player for us right away. And then you don't see him because you just got that much more talent ahead of him. That's where the running backs room is. There's a lot to really like about it. And I think that it's, you can tell he's really impressed with what he has. And he just has really good demeanor, and it's going to be fun to cover him on this team. So hope that it has a similar result to Greg Madison moving from, and Al Washington moving from Michigan to Ohio State, where they find themselves on the winning side. But it's going to take a lot of work between now and November to get to that point. All right, let's get to LaMar Morgan and the stuff that he had to say. He was very impressive. We will get to him here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, there's a lot of events coming up. We're getting into the summer. There's going to be concerts, theater, comedy. You might want to go to some Tigers games or any kind of baseball game near where you live if you're not in Michigan. And the best way to do that, to get tickets for those, is through Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even easier and faster. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Again, remember what I told you about Finding Lions tickets? Everyone was saying it's like $1,000 to get into that playoff game. I found tickets on Gametime for $400 and some, and they were seats, not standing room only. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can use the app features listed and customize your spot, and there's all of these different things that really help you kind of hone in on exactly where you want to sit. One of my favorite things is that it's got the view from your seat, like we just mentioned, but they've got all kinds of other stuff. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. You can buy Major League Baseball tickets in just a couple clicks, and you can find any kind of event from your area, but with their lowest price guaranteed and event cancellation protection. It's got a little bit of everything that you want. So the seat views, again, game changer. Get a panoramic view from your seat, and you can see exactly what you're going to be looking at once you actually get to the event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's finish up here while talking about LaMar Morgan. Let me pull up the notes here. And much like Josh Gaddis, he was a fast talker. There's a reason why I transcribed Tony Alford and not LaMar Morgan. Look, because I mean, granted, I use AI to at least get me started on these things, but LaMar Morgan was he was go. But you could tell he knew his stuff. Obviously he started really cutting his teeth. He had been a coach already for a while, but really started cutting his teeth at Vanderbilt under Jesse Minter. Said he had paid attention to what Michigan was doing under Minter and seeing like the principles that they had worked on in Vanderbilt kind of coming to life with some better players. He really likes the talent that they have on the back end. Remember, he coaches safeties and he coaches corners, but also recognizes that there's a lot of room for growth. So that's good. But I think one of the things that he mentioned is that really kind of stuck out to me was that he said that Michigan is a developmental program. That's not to say that it isn't a talented program, because he said that looking at the talent that he inherits, it is high level, right? It is elite. But one of the things that is that they want to be as coaches, developers. He says, when it comes down to it, I might be telling Will Johnson to do some different things, and he's not questioning me, which is good, but I still have to earn his trust. But I want to make him the best that he can be. It doesn't really matter your talent level that you come in. We're going to be a developmental program. We're going to be a program that takes you and builds you into something much better than when you arrived. So that is an absolute wonderful thing to hear, right? It's not just like, man, we got talent. Hope I don't mess this up. Now, they're not going to say that, but you can still understand that there's that he understands the assignment, right? So I asked him about Will Johnson and the depth behind him. Who are the other guys that are playing opposite him? And he says, to me, I think Will Johnson, everyone sees Will Johnson on the field and he plays. Really, if you're at practice, Will Johnson is like a freshman that just got here early and really trying to earn his respect from his teammates. Every time somebody makes a big play, and if Will is not on the field, he's running in the end zone with everybody. That dude cares about his teammates. He's the ultimate teammate that I've ever been around. That's his parents. His parents do a great job. His sister that works with us now, they're just first-class people. Dude just cares about his teammates. He's very genuine, always wants to learn, always wants to coach each other. I learn a lot from him. You got a new coach coming in here asking you to change some techniques, and he's open. He's just a very unique player, and that's what I think that people don't realize. Dude really, truly cares about his teammates, and he works just like he's trying to earn a spot on the bus every single day. Well, he gone. If you listen to Buckeye Scoop, he gone. I think all the corners are doing a good job now. You got Jair Hill. He's doing a good job. DJ Waller, Keyshawn Harris. We've been trying to throw a lot of the guys, the ones and twos, and getting them reps. That's what I believe in. You can't tell that guys will. You got to give guys an opportunity. You got to tell, if you tell guys that they're going to get an opportunity and they never get reps at it. Okay, it's hard to explain exactly how he said that, but just try to get guys as many reps as they can. Being able to have a big sample of what these guys have done all spring. Once he gets down to fall camp, summer, all that, we can make an adjustment of who we can put out there on the other side of Will. And about the talent, like he says, I think we've got a lot of talent here. And he mentioned Rod Moore, and obviously he confirmed Rod Moore being, obviously he's the first coach that is confirmed his injury. But he said, next day after he suffered a debilitating injury, he's right in there, front of the classroom, asking questions, making sure he's going to get better. Said he made a commitment to he's going to try to do his best to be back for that Ohio State game. So that's he's got a lot to work with. And he just had such a thorough breakdown of these players who are just in a really solid position to really help this team. But I just thought that he was really sharp, and he's reached out to people who worked with Wink Martindale. He said the DB coach at the Giants, to kind of continue to get a fuller understanding of how to work with Wink, tips and stuff like that. As far as the people who have done it before, obviously Jesse Minter, he's been on the phone with him as well, and who had that same deal in 2021. So I don't know. He just exuded youthful confidence, and I think he's a really good replacement for Clink in that sense, right? Clink being a little bit older than I am, whereas LaMar Morgan is a little bit younger than I am, I believe. It's he feels much younger than me in a good way, right? He just feels like he has got this, these stars in his eyes, but not in a I'm overtaken by the experience as much as I can look around at everything and see that I have a really big opportunity, and I'm going to make the most and take advantage of that opportunity. Some of the names that came out that were impressive, I think Zeke Berry got mentioned quite a few times, as well as Jade McBurrows. And I think with Zeke Berry, he feels like a guy, like as he was asked, like, Mikey Sanders still, him leaving, that leaves a dearth of leadership. And he said, like, Zeke Berry is going to be a unique player for this year. Still young, got to develop him. But he's got a lot of those traits. One thing that Mikey did is he was never in a bad position ever. You think he's out of phase, he turns his head around and intercepts the ball. He says that don't necessarily expect Zeke to be able to track that ball that well. But as far as the leadership capabilities that he has learned about Mikey, because Mikey's been around, obviously, as he prepares for the NFL draft, and he's heard obviously all about him. He's like, I think that it bodes really well for us with what Zeke Berry is doing. So I think that the other part, and we talked about this before, is the fact that he is yet another position coach who has coordinator experience. The majority of this Michigan team's coaches do. The only one that does not is, if in one way or another, is Grant Newsome, because Ron Bellamy at least was the head coach of a high school program. Steve Cazula being the offensive coordinator at UMass. Tony Alford actually also doesn't have coordinator experience, I don't believe. But then you look on the defense, it's every single coach has coordinator experience. And way LaMar Morgan describes it is it allows us to see the big picture. And he clearly does see the big picture. So I'm excited to see what the secondary does under him. Don't expect it to be one way or another, but he did kind of intimate that there are some relatively big changes. But like he said, it is personnel driven. It is what can our guys do the best. There might be games where you see guys fully in man, might be games where guys are fully in zone. It will call from the personnel and the situation. So they're not going to put guys in situations that they can't handle, is basically what he intimated. So I was really impressed. I'm excited to see where he goes from here. All right, we'll be back on Thursday. We're going to go through my offensive two deep for spring ball that I put out. So we'll get to that, and then we'll go to we'll probably have a day where if we can get 5 in, which again we'll see. If we can get 5 in, we'll go over defense, which I have not written up yet. I know what my defensive two deep is though, and also we've got another press conference tomorrow, so we'll see what we can get through there. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will be back soon. Peace.